Also got I've got a photo to show you.
Yeah?
Yeah, and we're gonna get it up if we can on the YouTube.
I don't even
But
know
I might
what
have to file an assault case against you for this one, mate.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've seen this one. This one's great.
Do you know you hold a crazy statistical record with Portland Timbers?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
For
everyone listening.
I gotta hang my hat. On that one.
For everyone listening, Brad holds.
And it's hard for, I think, a lot of people to understand, but most people, certainly my dream was to be a professional soccer player. I'm sure yours was too. And I don't know if you do. You don't have like a second dream.
No.
You know,
No.
like, okay, now what am I going to do?
Yeah. On today's episode, you're in for a treat. It's not very often we get to call a club legend in from Indy 11. Someone who also epitomizes this podcast, does a lot of work on the mental side of the game and helps a lot of athletes through mental struggle. And he is also fresh off the TST tournament, so can't wait to hear about that.
This is In the Loop with Jack Blake, an Indy 11 podcast. We bring you an insight into the lives of professional athletes with an emphasis on the mental side of sports.
Welcome to episode 4 of In the Loop. I'm your host, Jack Blake. Very excited for today's episode. It's not often we can get a club legend in the building. Someone also epitomizes this podcast, really, working with a lot of mental health with athletes. And he's also fresh off a semi-final at the TST tournament. Please welcome Brad Ring.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Very excited to get into this one. Let's start off, please, with the TST. I guess it's something so new that a lot of us are kind of figuring out what it's all about. Yeah. So like how did it all come about, and then how did your involvement kind of start with that?
I think in general, there's a lot of these kind of like secondary leagues that are popping up, all different sports. You can think like Athletes Unlimited, League One Volleyball, Pro Volleyball Federation, Big Three Basketball, TBT, the basketball tournament, right? So there's a lot of these leagues popping up, and I think TST, the soccer tournament, is no different. It's, hey, there's a lot of interest in soccer. What can we do that's fun and engaging for obviously the community of Cary, North Carolina, but the greater, kind of soccer community? And there's a lot of, former pros or guys passionate about soccer that would like to play. And I think that's kind of how it all started. And it's a great tournament. They do a great job. This year is only their second year doing it. My first year going, and got to experience it both as a player on Hoosier Army, which is a team made up of IU alums. And then I also got to experience it as a sponsor. My company, OnRise, was a sponsor of TST. So that had a unique experience in that regard. But from a soccer-specific experience, it was a heck of a lot of fun. Haven't played competitively since 2018, October of 2018. So it had been some time. Yeah. And luckily, we had a lot of younger guys on the team to do the grunt work. I came in and gave them some breaks here and there, but, let the 20-somethings, kind of handle the workload. Yeah,
we had a road trip to, I think it was Birmingham, so we were all watching your games on the bus. It was good fun. The rules are crazy. So let me get this right. 7v7, it's 2 20-minute periods.
Yep.
At the end of the 40 minutes, if the score is, for example, 2-1, then the target goal would be +1 to 3.
Yep.
So the team that only have one goal have a chance to get to 3, they could win.
Yep.
And so obviously you benefit from winning at that point. And then is it every 2 minutes? Every 3 minutes it goes from 7v7 to 6v6.
Yep.
And then, the final ended up being, was it a 2v1 or 2v2, was it?
Something like that. Yeah, it's wild. We were in that situation last year. I remember, similar to you, kind of watching on my phone or computer or whatever when Hoosier Army was in it last year. And it's like a little gimmicky, right? But it's also, you kind of got to have a different angle, I think, when you're doing a tournament like this. And it's fun. It's fun to be a part of, That there was a game this year that was, I think it was 4-0 heading into target time. And the team that was down 4-0 won 5-4. Came back and won it. And some of these teams they're kind of like, the makeup of the teams are vastly different, right? Some are like older European guys, some are younger guys, some are a blend between ex-pros or ex-college guys, pro guys, and it's interesting to see that, right? We kind of have the IU alums, and then we play against Villarreal in the knockout stages.
Yeah,
you know, and
I love
it's
it.
like,
I love it.
I mean, you can't find two different groups of people kind of playing against each other, so it just makes for a kind of fun soccer ecosystem and week.
Yeah, so you got the celebrities like JJ Watt, you got Pat McAfee, obviously Nani, footballer, but how was it? So when you arrive at the tournament, are you kind of around these guys? Like, do you feel that sort of buzz where you get a lot of people interested, or how did it feel like day to day at the tournament?
So they have, like, in the back, not open to the public, they have an area called Athletes Village. And it's kind of like a small locker room area for each team. But there's 48, on the men's side, 8 I think they had on the women's side, right? So 56 of these locker rooms. There's a lot of people back there, right? Yeah. So you're kind of running into people. I'm running into like Graham Zuzi and Lee Wynn and some of these other guys that I've either played with or against over the years. So that was kind of fun. Paulo Del Piccolo, Lou City guy. Yeah. So I just had a bunch of these like pretty random conversations with guys that I've played against. But it was fun, because everyone now at this point is on the other side of the retirement, right? So I think after you're a year or two out, you can kind of look back at it with a lot of appreciation and respect, knowing what you went through, knowing they went through the same thing, right? And kind of just a mutual respect for one another.
So the butterflies that you felt when you were playing, so let's go back to October, November of 2018. What % of the butterflies did you feel going out into the TST tournament?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it wasn't the same, but it was close. Maybe half. Yeah,
$1 million
half.
on the line.
Yeah,
I'll be raring to go.
That'd be nice. Yeah, you mentioned like some of the celebrities out there too, and we were leaving one night from Athletes Village, me and my family, and we ran into Pat McAfee.
Okay.
And man, really nice guy, really down to earth. There was like a storm coming in, so like winds were blowing, like you could tell it was about to downpour any second. And he's signing all my kids' T-shirts, and we were just like chatting about the tournament a little bit. And that was the game actually, the night of when he did his free kick that he sent to the moon and hurt his I think hip flexor.
His hip flexor went further than the ball.
Yeah. He was laughing about that, and he was like, "Dude, I just did my leg dirty in this game."
He got a national assist though in that.
He did. To Grella. Yeah, that was a nice little ninja kick goal out of Grella there. That was another guy. Like I remember playing against him when he was at Duke and I was at IU.
Yeah.
I think he was at Red Bull. I was with the Quakes, so it was cool. Just a good group of guys coming out to obviously compete, but also have fun and kind of experience it at a different level.
So did you have, before the game started, you had a couple of training sessions, did you? And then was there any like tactical things going into a game that you would focus on, or would it just be like, go out and let's try and work through it? Like,
did you have
a plan going in?
So we didn't have any like training. Some teams had training camps, so like brought guys on site and they trained together for a week or two. We didn't have that. Our guys are kind of all over the country, specifically the Midwest. But we did have 2 sessions, Monday and Tuesday, before our game started on Wednesday. Okay. And we had done a couple Zoom sessions as well, where Coach Robeson, Brian Plotkin, and others on the Hoosier Army staff put a game plan in place. So they talked about positions where they saw you playing individually, what guys were rotating into those spots, what we were going to play like, how were we going to high press, how were we going to low defend, and kind of the style of play that we were going to kind of bring to the table. So I do think that we entered the tournament on the same page, like in lockstep. It probably helped that we all went to IU. IU has a certain way of playing and expectations out of their players. So I think we were all kind of cut from the same mold in that degree as well. Yeah. I'm sure that in part led to some of the success that we had. I think we were pretty organized and structured. And, take the Villarreal game, for instance, or even like the first game against Trident. Like, we knew we were younger and more athletic and had more of an engine, right? So our thing is like, we're high pressing. Like, we're putting them under pressure, putting them under.
Yeah.
If it's tied at half, we're confident we're going to win in the second half because we got more energy. And that's how, a good number of the games played out, kind of close-ish at half, and then we kind of pulled away a little bit more in the second.
I think the future for that tournament is really bright. Like you said, it's something different. They add a few little things. I think taking off a player as well, the target time. I think it's all great entertainment. You said you meant the OnRise, which I'm really interested in as well, but the sponsor, how does that work? They sponsor the team, and then the team, they have to fund the team? Is that how it works? And then,
yeah, good question. So there's a bunch of different opportunities, I guess, for sponsorship. So OnRise wasn't a sponsor of our team, but they were a sponsor of the soccer tournament. So they had some signage and a cabana kind of in between the two main fields, and had some opportunities to kind of be in front of some other, highly engaged folks at the tournament. Sogility was a big sponsor of Hoosier Army as well as other groups. So yeah, you can kind of be a team sponsor, a tournament sponsor. There's some different options there.
Yeah, shout out to Sogility there with some great training equipment they do. The OnRise thing is I think fantastic. I know a lot of players in the USL that are really benefiting from that.
Love it, yeah.
And I guess this podcast really, we want to focus on the mental side and how, not a lot of people realize that the mental side that goes into it, not just players, the families that are associated with the players, then obviously the coaches, the fans, like it's all heavily a mental game. How did you want to get into that? Did you have your own personal struggles with mental health, or how did that sort of come about?
No, it's a good question. I think I wasn't someone who struggled mightily with mental health, but I always saw tons of value in mental performance, mental coaching, just the mental side of it. Even small things like visualization, right? Like a routine of mine, my entire starting in college through pro, so 13 years. Every national anthem, I would close my eyes and I would sway back and forth and I would visualize what was going to come in the game. So, receiving the ball from the right back, turn and hitting it across to the left mid, going up for a header, a slide tackle, a shot, a pass, whatever it is, I would just visualize at that moment.
Yeah.
And that was just part of my routine, kind of like my mental routine going into games. So OnRise does a lot of different things to support athlete mental health. And kind of dive into some of those there in a little bit. But I think the mental side of it is so important. If you're in a better spot mentally, I don't think anyone can argue this, right? If you're in a better spot mentally, you have a higher likelihood to perform better, right? So that's, in part what we do is support, USL players. We work with the U.S. women's national team through their PA. We work at the MLS through their PA. Inter Miami, Philadelphia Union, One Knox. We have a thing with U.S. Club Soccer. That's just in the soccer space. We're not soccer specific. We work with volleyball leagues, clubs, lacrosse, etc. So it's been super rewarding, kind of on this side of things to be back into kind of the sports world in a different capacity, but still kind of fighting for essentially players' rights and such, so that they're in a better spot.
Yeah, I think as well, like, I guess it's difficult to compare the sports because I think every single sport professionally probably has its different challenges and its different mental challenges as well. So I think with soccer, I think, it's a lot of getting in the mindset of the games. The games come thick and fast, and then it's the recovery to losses, or it's the winning feeling, and it's the up and down roller coaster. Do you see in different sports it vary, or is it all quite similar to do with that structure of the mental side?
It's a good question, and I do think from like a mental standpoint, the struggles are pretty, I don't want to say equal, but pretty similar across sports, right? If you think of volleyball, lacrosse, basketball, softball, any of those sports, there's still a physical grind that you're putting your body through. That's tough mentally, as you know. Seasons are long. I think people on the outside think, well, you're playing soccer, like how hard is that, But after months and months and months of doing the same thing, and you pick up little injuries here and there, and you still got to go out and perform and practice and run. Like, as you know, there's days you wake up and you're like, the last thing I want to do is run or kick a ball. I'm not feeling it, but you got to push through and you got to do it. Similar in other sports, right? So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of coping with losses, family life, as you mentioned, right? I know you have a family and little ones, and that's not always easy when you get on the older end of things and you're leaving your family behind. There's some dad guilt that I'm sure that you feel at times, know. So it's some of it's performance related, some of it's completely off the field stuff, right? Maybe you're thinking, not you specifically, right? But maybe you're thinking, retirement's close. What am I going to do next? How am I going to prepare for that? So there's just a lot of life challenges that everyone deals with, no matter what sport they're playing.
Yeah, you beat me to my next question. One thing I'm really nervous, could be how I would describe it, but when I finish playing, I think I'm gonna struggle a little bit with the detachment of training every day, being involved in that locker room environment. Was that something that was difficult for you when you?
Yeah, you know, I've heard a lot of people explain it this way, and it stuck with me. Like, part of when you retire, and it's been something that you've done just like me and others, right? 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. Like, part of you dies. It may sound dramatic to hear that way, but it's true. Like, literally part of you kind of dies, and you'll never go back to it. Mm. And it's hard for, I think, a lot of people to understand, but most people, certainly my dream was to be a professional soccer player. I'm sure yours was too. And I don't know, I don't know if you do. You don't have like a second dream.
No.
You know,
no.
It's like, well, okay, now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
You know, I retired at 31, and I know I still have like 30 working years left, right?
Yeah.
So like, what am I going to do during those 30 years where I get enjoyment and I feel fulfilled and all of those things? So I was someone who was always thinking and kind of planning ahead, and I went through a whole bunch of different ideas of like what my next journey would be after soccer. As you know, the landscape can be a little shaky,
rocky,
right? So at any point, I was like, man, I could get cut, especially early on. Like, I could get cut and my paycheck is done after like next week, you know? So I was always kind of thinking about what to do. So like early on, I was thinking athletic director. Then I kind of started, as I played a couple more years, all right, sales, maybe medical device sales or commercial real estate or software sales. That's ultimately where I landed, and did software sales in the nonprofit tech space for 5 years before finding OnRise. But the transition for me, it wasn't easy, but it was quick, I guess. So my last game was October of 18, and then I started my kind of real world big boy job December 3rd.
Yeah.
So it was about a month, 5 weeks, and I was in the office. I took an entry-level role, right, sales development representative, where I was reaching out, cold outreach to organizations, nonprofits, to see if they'd be open to a conversation to learn more about what we did. And the benefit of that is that it wasn't a locker room feel, right, because you're in the corporate world, but there was 12 to 15 other people in that role, and we were all in office together. So there was some camaraderie that kind of helped replace the locker room feel.
Interesting, yeah.
Now I think that has shifted with COVID and working remotely. You know, it's harder to duplicate that in a remote virtual working environment, but there's still good options out there.
Those of you that can see on YouTube, you'll see that Brad is in fantastic shape for someone that's retired. Is there part of the mental health benefit's not the right word, but part of helping the mental health is physical exercise. So is there something that you've found other than football that you've done that helps you get about every day and stay in shape?
I've definitely found I kind of had to relearn myself, to be honest, when I retired. Right, you're in a specific routine, a workout routine, an eating routine. Even for me, like drinking coffee routine. It's like, when do you do it? How does that work? And you figure out a system that works for you. Then you retire, and it's like your body doesn't quite know what you're doing. Your digestive process doesn't know what you're doing. It's kind of all out of whack. So I didn't really work out like most of 2019. I kind of took like a year, give my body a break, and it just kind of what felt right for me, but then got back into a good routine. That's when I figured out that I'm happiest, is when I have a routine. So I try to get out in the morning, every morning, and do something, usually 3-4 times a week. It's some sort of run or weights at the gym. Other days it might just be going for a longer walk with my wife around the neighborhood, do 2, 3, 4 miles or something outside. So those are certainly things that have helped me, and I think you're spot on, right? Like your physical health and how you're feeling physically has a massive impact on where you're at mentally, and I think I found a good balance as of right now. Right now I have had a weird idea to do, like, this is going to sound silly to guys who run all the time, but when you stop running as much as you do, like a mile, 100 squats, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups in a day.
I've seen that. Yeah,
so I was like, I'm 4 days in right now.
Oh yeah, how's it going?
My calf's starting to hurt a little bit.
How's the abs?
I got my abs are okay, but like I got just just in the torso area.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you get older, you just got like, oh, my rib hurts for some reason. You're not quite sure why.
Wow, you bounced straight off the TST into that then.
Yeah, that's probably it. I was like kind of getting ready for TST, and I'm like, well, now what? What am I like?
I've got this
training
machine.
for?
I need to keep it going.
Yeah, so I think I'm in the thick of it right now, day 4. I think after like another day or 2, then my body's gonna be like, all right, I understand what you're trying to do to me, and then I'll be in the groove. But yeah.
Well, to dive into the career you had, 109 appearances for Indy 11, that's what I have you on. Definitely a club legend. Are there any moments or games that you remember specifically that stand out? There are maybe top 3 moments that you can remember of your career.
Yeah, definitely when we won the spring title in 2016, we needed to win by 3 goals against Carolina and did so at home. That was a fun victory. Definitely one that stands out.
What year was that?
I think that was 2016.
16.
Yep, that was Tim Hankinson's first year. Definitely that later in that year, home playoff win against Edmonton. Like we won 1-0. I think Sinisha put one in upper 90. Great shot. Even though we lost the game, you know, the finals was fun against the Cosmos that year as well. We lost in a shootout.
What a team they had, by the way.
Yeah, they had a great team.
Yeah.
You know, that was, and we had a veteran group that we knew how to play. We knew what to do. It was great battles when we played them.
Yeah.
Really all the time. We tied them, I think, the first like 6 times we played them as a club, which was wild. And then we had the 2016 year, which was, you know, kind of more good battles. And obviously Iose eventually came over to Indy 11, and he was at TST, by the way. He was on a team.
Yeah, I saw that.
But yeah, those three stick out. Definitely that first season was magical, the 2014 year.
Yeah.
You know, we were young and new as a club trying to figure it out, and we had a lot of young, new players as well.
Yeah.
So we struggled a bit on the field, but man, the fans showed up, and it was a heck of an atmosphere at the mic, and I have a lot of good memories on the field certainly, and then also, you know, I was kind of like starting my family at that time, so like just having my kids around and being there and coming on the field after the games and like stuff like that, which is.
Producer Ian said there's a photo of you chugging a beer on the pitch with all the fans on the field. What game was that?
Yeah, I think that was the Carolina game. Yeah, that had to have been the Carolina game that we clinched the spring. So that was the NASL, right? Yeah, so if you win the spring, you automatically are in the finals. Kind of a funky thing, but it was a big win for us, obviously, as a club. And yeah, it's funny because I had come, obviously, from MLS, so I was thinking that there were going to be repercussions or I might get fined or something for drinking the beer. So I did it
sneakily under the...
Yeah, I should have. Dumb, but I don't know. I think in my head, someone was handing me a beer.
Yeah.
I think he might have just been standing there and I took it from him. I'm not sure which is reality. I'll go with he handed it to me to make myself feel better. But yeah, I chugged it. There were some good videos after that are pretty funny.
I've also got I've got a photo to show you.
Yeah?
Yeah, and we're gonna get it up if we can on the YouTube.
I don't even
but
know
I might have to file an assault case against you for this one, mate.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've seen this one. This is great. This is great. God, look at your quads, man. You working out or what?
I've been doing my burpees, mate.
I had to be the enforcer there in the middle, and unfortunately, that meant going up against tricky, creative attacking players like you, which were hard to deal with. Good
times.
You, Steinberger, back in the Jacksonville days. Even Iose, man, that guy played left back, but he essentially played wherever he wanted. He just float all over the place.
Bang free kicks in.
Could never understand like where he was or what position he was playing, but he was always a handful.
One thing that is very unique, and it happens a fair bit over here, and it was my first experience of it, was the NASL folding and the end of 2017. And I know you played, your last year was in the USL.
Yep.
So you were contracted with Indy from, I have you down as 2014, 2018.
Yeah.
So you played 3 years in NASL, and then it folded, and then you guys went to USL. What was that period of time like? Because for me, from my memory of it, was so much uncertainty. At the time, my wife was pregnant with Leo, so we hadn't had a kid yet. It was our first child. She was heavily pregnant, found out that the league was folding. It was like panic stations, really took a toll mentally.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
Yeah, I have I'll share that, and then I'll share when I was leaving the MLS, I was with Portland. They offered a contract to me that they knew I wouldn't accept, and I knew I wouldn't accept. It was kind of just a, kind of a crap offer. I think just to keep my rights, essentially. Similar situation. We were expecting our first kid. I was about to be out of contract. Insurance was running out December 31st. Didn't have other, guaranteed options. So I was kind of in this influx of, do I try to work something out with Portland? Indy ultimately, Peter Wilt and Jurgen Sommer, they were starting the team. Obviously, or Saul, right? But the soccer side of things was starting the team, and ended up finding my way here. I think it was a blessing in disguise. But similar to you, like that was a stressful time. Yeah. We ended up moving to Indy when my wife was, I think, 38 weeks pregnant. Oh. So yeah, she didn't love that.
On a plane?
Of that stretch. Yeah, like the doctor was like,
wow.
Essentially, like you need to leave now, or else you're not leaving for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
So
that was a nervous flight.
It worked out. Yeah, it wasn't great. Yeah. No, she was a champ. But then, so yeah, when the NESL was folding, I was confident Indy 11 would be fine and have a team. We had a couple of years of good success, I think, from a business standpoint, and putting people in the stands, and then had some success, obviously, in 2016 on the field. So I wasn't really nervous from that standpoint, but I didn't know how that would impact things. I was less familiar with the USL, didn't know exactly how they operated. So yeah, I mean, change is always tough, right? Especially if you're not sure what that change looks like.
Yeah, I do miss the NASL, but having said that, I do think the NASL folding made the USL way more stronger.
For sure.
The quality of players that came from the NASL was crazy, really. Do you know you hold a crazy statistical record with Portland Timbers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So for everyone
I
listening.
I got to hang my hat on that one.
For everyone listening, Brad holds the record for the highest team goals per minute of any Timbers player ever. So Brad made his debut against Toronto in 2013. And he came on in the 89th minute, played a minute, and Timbers scored in that minute. So you therefore hold that record.
No, he'll never be beaten.
Never be beaten.
Never played another minute on the first team.
That's crazy.
Perfect.
Yeah. So when you got traded, because you were previously you were drafted to
San Jose.
Yep. You made about 37 appearances with them. What was the draft process like for you? Like, did you know you were going to San Jose? Was it last minute thing you found out on the spot? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so I'll rewind. After my junior year, there was some interest for me to leave college early and go pro. Ultimately decided to go back for my senior year at IU. But at that point, I kind of knew, hey, unless I do something, have a terrible year, I'll have an opportunity to get drafted.
Yeah.
So I took a bunch of extra credits, got my degree in 3.5 years so that I was ready come the draft in 2009. The unfortunate thing is I picked up an injury my senior year, so I missed like half of the year, ended up not being able to go to the MLS Combine. That was pretty frustrating. Obviously, some clubs had done their homework, including San Jose and others that still obviously expressed interest in drafting me. So San Jose drafts me. I go out for their preseason, but I'm still dealing with this injury. It was a lower ab injury called osteitis pubis.
Had it.
It was a pain in the butt.
Brutal.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. Very slow recovery. So I get out there and I'm going through training, but I can't quite like strike a ball hard because that hurt, and I couldn't really open it up. Like if I kept my stride really close, then I felt good. But anytime I did anything like semi-athletic, it hurt.
Yeah.
So they essentially said, hey, like, you got some issues. They did an x-ray. They thought they saw something going on in my hips. They were like, you got a lot of stuff. Go deal with your stuff, essentially. Okay. So they kind of, in a way, like booted me out and was like, hey, when you're healthy, come on back. We'd like to have you. Obviously, we think highly of you as a player, but you got some stuff that you're dealing with. So I went back to IU. I had already graduated, and every doctor that I saw said, just shut it down for like 4 or 5 months. Just do nothing.
Yeah. Which is a footballer, like, how are you going to do that? Yeah.
So, but I knew at that point, like, that was the only thing that even made sense, because I knew I wasn't going to get a contract that year anyways, you know? So it was a blessing in disguise. I got to live like a normal college life for 4 or 5, 6 months, which was kind of nice. Then I started training, and at the end of that year, the 2009 MLS season, I went back out to San Jose the last month of the season, and essentially was on trial training with them the last month, and then got a contract the following preseason. So my process was a little wonky, I guess, because of the injury that I was dealing with. And I didn't know for sure, to get to your original question, I did not know for sure that they would draft me. So I received a call. My agent said, hey, I think San Jose is going to draft you next, or in a pick or two, or something like that. So that's kind of how I found out. And then I remember, going out with some friends in Bloomington that night and having fun, and literally Googling, like, where is San Jose, California? I'm not even sure.
Yeah. Is it crazy altitude up there? Is it?
What's that?
Crazy altitude up in San Jose?
It's not terrible. It's not terrible. The weather's actually great. It's like 75 every day. Like, doesn't get super hot, doesn't get super cold. It's funny, they complain about like a rainy season out there, and it rains like once a week or something. They're very spoiled with their weather out there in that area.
So then you got traded to Portland. Am I right in saying that you worked with our gaffer? You worked with Sean. Sean was one of the assistants.
Yep. They had a good staff. Caleb Porter was the head coach there.
Yeah.
Pablo was one of their assistants. Sean, Amos McGee, another guy there. But yeah, so worked with him in Portland, and I was primarily on the second team.
Yeah.
During that time, dressing for some of the first team games, but obviously on a reserve. So playing a lot of like the reserve games and stuff. So got to know him, fairly well, although it was short. I was only, it was like 3 months. That I was there, 4 months. But yeah, great guy. So when I saw he was hired here, I was pretty excited.
Yeah. So, not people won't know this, but you actually helped coach my son, who's in part of the Indiana Academy, which is also another cool connection. Having 3 kids yourself?
Yep.
Yeah. How was the coaching your own kids? How's that been? Because people ask me, how I deal with Leo, and from a footballing aspect, how have you approached that?
Yeah,
because that's difficult.
Yeah. It can be. I think it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think as as a pro, there's a lot of extra stuff that goes into and complicates the game, right? Contracts and standings and all sorts of stuff, which is never going to go away, But at the youth level, at the 8, 9, 10 level, like, none of that's there. It's just soccer.
Yeah.
It's just like going out and having fun and playing with your friends, and that's the beauty of it, is that, like, my middle son, who I coach now, Nolan, like, he's not necessarily, he wants to win, but it's not going to ruin his day if he doesn't. So it's fun. It's like kind of grassroots soccer, and you can kind of just focus on having fun and getting these kids touches and teaching them some things, and really just creating an environment that kind of enables them to be passionate about soccer.
Is coaching something you want to get into a bit more, like, in a professional level, or is it more of just like hobby, you enjoy doing it? What do you think?
I had some chats and options as I was retiring. I won't name who, but some good clubs in the Midwest. And it was intriguing, but it led to the lifestyle of traveling and uncertainty. Right? And you start having some kids, and you start thinking, yeah, that'd be fun for a couple of years. But then you think, wait, what if when I get let go, or, you got to move up, and
results don't go well for 5 games, and you
got an owner that's got a short leash on you, and you're moving around all the time. That means, okay, I have no problem moving around, but then my kids are moving schools, and then their networks and their friends and wives work and all sorts of stuff. It's just, it wasn't worth it for me in the end. So long-winded way of saying, the youth space is great for me. I only coach my kids. I like coaching other kids, but I also don't, if I'm out there coaching additional games, that means I'm missing something they're doing, and my kids don't just play soccer either. So they play baseball and basketball, and my daughter does gymnastics. So they're doing all sorts of stuff, and we're busy, but that's kind of how we how we like it. But
yeah,
it's a joy, man. The kids are unbelievable. Your son included. And it's a fun group. So
yeah, the also something that I'm really interested about is the USLPA. So the listeners will know probably that MLS has a players association, but the USL recently, I think 2019, 2020, started a players association, which ultimately helps the players in the league and have minimum standards. It helps the quality of life. It just has a structure for the players, and it's something that's incredibly important. And 2020 was probably the best year that it could have started with COVID and all that sort of stuff. Was you were one of the founding members of that?
Yeah.
Where did the idea come from, and how was that process? Because I can't imagine that being simple.
Yeah, it was not. I think there was 8 or 9 of us that kind of got together. There was kind of like the executive committee, Trey Mitchell, Connor Tobin, Tommy Heineman, and then I think 6 or 7 other guys. And yeah, we had a crazy idea that, hey, some clubs don't do things the way that they should probably do it. And there's a massive discrepancy too in pay and per diem and days off and all sorts of stuff, right? And as you know, a lot of clubs do it the right way. But there was no standards, and there was no one, kind of keeping clubs accountable.
Yeah.
And the people that got the short end of that stick were the players, right? So it was a process. I think it ultimately, it started my last year playing 2018. I don't think it got finalized. We didn't get a CBA until maybe started the 23 season or something, even though we were voluntarily recognized by the league.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of steps along the way, right? We had to get player reps in each locker room, then a supporting rep in each locker room. We had to go through an authorization card process, essentially the player saying, hey, we accept you and want you to kind of represent us collectively.
Yeah.
Then we had to start negotiations with the league. Then COVID hit and all sorts of stuff,
Shit
right?
show,
so there's a lot of obstacles. There was, that group put hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteer hours into getting that established. But with that said, it's something that I look back on and think, that is 100% hands down the thing I'm most proud of in my career is being part of that. There's other players, people come in and break records and chug beers. Anyone can do that, right? But
steal beers.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and coincidentally, that's actually how I got connected to OnRise. So the USLPA, you kind of referenced this to kick things off. The USLPA was an early customer of OnRise. So I was having a chat with Connor Tobin, the executive director of the USLPA, and he said, hey, I had a chat with the CEO of this company that we use, OnRise. You're familiar? I said, yeah, I know who OnRise is. He said, well, they're looking for someone. I think you might be a good fit. So I had a chat with her, and then ultimately that's how I kind of found my way over to OnRise, which has been a fun, as I kind of mentioned, I kind of got out of sports for 5 years in the nonprofit SaaS tech space.
Yeah.
So that was a good kind of fun re-entry, kind of mixing both worlds, my soccer athletic background with also 5 years of experience within sales, and kind of really blending both of those into this role with OnRise, talking to different players associations, different clubs professionally, as well as youth clubs. We're in the youth space now, which is fun and rewarding as well. Collegiate programs, to various leagues, really any sports organization that's looking for different resources to support athlete mental health.
Yeah, I definitely think the year of COVID, undoubtedly without the USLPA, things would have gone a lot different for the players. You guys created standards that the clubs had to hold, and ultimately the families of the players were secure to a certain extent financially, and it was a very difficult period of time mentally as well. For me, I was the team rep at Monarchs when it all broke out, and we were being told originally there were things like pay cuts. We had to take, I think it was 30% pay cut initially off the top, and then maybe not even get paid at the end of it. I remember going through that period of time when my second Mimi was just born, and it was tough because it was 1 year contracts at the time as well, and it was like, don't know what's going to happen. So I think undoubtedly you should be proud of that, because you helped a lot of players out in that scenario.
Yeah, that was all these other leagues took pay cuts, if you remember.
I do,
Even players associations. I don't quote me on this, but like I think MLB took cuts. I think like NBA guys took cuts. Like big leagues with well-established players associations took cuts. Now, granted, maybe because they have the means to take cuts, but we didn't, right? Like, no, we can't take cuts. These are a lot of guys in the league are, you know, single earners in their family, right? Like, you can't take a 30-40% chop off the top. They can't support their families, you know? So, it's funny you bring that up. I haven't actually thought about that specifically in a while. It feels like a lifetime ago now, but
it does. I mean, I remember when the NBA I think was the first league where they stopped the season, and then when they stopped, every other sport and every other league stopped. And I remember being like, well, couldn't even imagine this ever happening. Like, what do we do now? And it was, again, back to the mental side of it, the work with OnRise, like, you know, helping players through that period of time, because I remember that was difficult for me. You know, I had to go out and run every day, otherwise I felt like mentally I was just not there. So with the OnRise stuff, what is your day-to-day? Is it very hands-on, or are you more in the background and kind of working out which players are involved and stuff like that?
Yeah, good question. So I'd say in general, I mean, it's a collective company. We all work together, but to simplify it, we kind of have like a business side of the house and then a medical side of the house, right? So I'm more on the business side of the house.
Okay.
So I'm doing a lot of outreach and having Zoom calls, phone calls, sometimes in-person meetings with, you know, executive directors at youth clubs, with, you know, athletic departments within universities, various leagues that I kind of referenced earlier, all sorts of different sports organizations. And I'm the senior vice president of sales, so I'm just having a conversation like about what they have in place to support athlete mental health. Obviously talking a little bit about what we do and kind of feeling out what gaps they have and how we might be able to help them, essentially, you know. And then the, you know, kind of more medical side of the house, they do a great job. We have multiple levels of care that's pretty unique to OnRise. So psychiatrists, therapists, and then we have kind of a peer support model. We call them athlete mental health specialists, but this is someone like you could potentially serve in a role like this, right? Where it's someone who's been in their shoes. So picture like any academy player in MLS Next. Like they would love to talk to you, right? Because like you've been in their shoes. You've had that grind. You've gone through the academy process, you've made it pro, and they're more prone to open up and talking to you than they would a 50, 60-year-old psychiatrist. Right? Yeah. So we have all these levels of care, really just based on where they're at. You know, if it's someone who's seen a therapist for years, no problem. We have that. If it's someone that needs medication for a number of reasons, maybe they're battling something serious like depression or something, then we have options for that. And if it's someone who's just struggling with anxiety, right? Or they're feeling extra stress or pressure, or maybe going through like the recruiting process, or maybe their friends are getting contracts and they're not, right? That can weigh heavy on these elite academy kids.
So for people listening now who might be in that situation, what's the quickest way for them to get help through OnRise?
Yeah, so I mean, we work through clubs right now. So really just bringing it up to your club leaders, whether it's a coach or a director or executive director. But we work with clubs to provide care for all of their players, essentially. It is typically not like our kids, U8, right?
Yeah.
Typically it's like that U13 kind of MLS Next age and up, kind of teenagers and up.
Yeah.
That's when you're going through puberty. You got some things going on. You're thinking high school, college, pro. You know, there's a lot of other elements kind of going on in your life at that time.
Okay.
But yeah, any players, you can kind of tap the shoulders of your coaches or directors. Obviously, any directors or executive directors or board members that feel like, hey, we could be doing a little bit more to support athlete mental health. You know, give me a call, reach out, check us out online. We're here to help for sure.
That leads me into my final question. Thank you very much for coming on here. It's really interesting. I think people will find this very helpful and very inspirational. I think my final question is going to be, if you could rewind time to that era, so 13, 14, 15, about to turn pro, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Oh, wow.
Knowing what you know now.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You have some time to think.
I'll say, you know, it's interesting because the first thing that comes to my mind is like doing a little bit more, like training a little bit more. Yeah. Certainly on my own. one reason I hesitate to say that is kids these days train more as a team than I did when I was their age. Like, I didn't train every day until high school when I was doing it like after school, right? Or then college, obviously. But as a youth player, I wasn't training every single day, not 4 days a week. Usually it was 2 days a week. I don't know if it was different for you, but so I say that with a little grain of salt, you know, do more, because there's obviously a breaking point where like, no, you don't need to do more. Like you find a good balance, but I guess just kind of learn yourself, learn areas that you need to improve on. I think if I look back, like I had the work rate and I had the hustle and the grit and some of those things. I think I could have done a better job refining some foot skills and being, you know, a more complete six and helping my team a little bit more in possession and other things. Yeah. So I think just looking at maybe where you feel like you have room for improvement and then put some time into those areas. Yeah,
I guess as well, like the support team that you have around you, whether it's family, whether it's coaches, it's, you know, it's not being afraid to be like, hey, what do you think I need to improve on? You know, that's probably another thing I would say to myself is, you know, reach out to other people, reach out for help with them. Yeah, and then doing it, right? I think it's easy to like take on advice and think about it and then maybe do it once or twice, but it's like, no, let's try to pinpoint an area and then really focus on it. And like, I'm going to do 3 months where I'm going to like really hammer in on this topic. Like you can think of NBA players, Jordan, Kobe, all these guys, that's what they did in the off season, right? It's like, hey, Jordan was getting older. He developed a fadeaway, right? And it's like, what are some things that I can do during this stretch to really improve myself as a player? Because as you know, I mean, if you're really good at one thing, like that can make a career. You know, if you're really good at free kicks, or if you're a defender, but you're also really good at, you know, coming in off of corners and scoring goals, like those little things can add up and really make a career for someone. So will we see you next year at TST? I hope so. We'll see. It's up to, you know, Coach Robeson down there at Hoosier Army. See if they'll have me back. You know, I'm getting older, so if they got some young bucks that want to go run around a little bit more, that's okay too. I'll support them. I'll support that tournament for sure. So. Well, thanks again, mate. It's been fantastic. I hope you guys have enjoyed episode 4 of In the Loop. I certainly have, and we'll see you on the next one.
This is In the Loop with Jack Blake, an Indy 11 podcast. Be sure to like and follow this podcast and check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network. To watch the video of this podcast, subscribe to the Indy 11 YouTube channel.